sorry, but if you genuinely believe that these bags are made in China, you've fallen victim to fake news. Chinese factory talk is a scam. In fact, last year I was inside the Hermes factory just outside Paris where they were producing these bags by hand. They're made by a single craftsman from start to finish. All this stuff on TikTok, it's not real. They're just showing you fakes.
It's 4,000.
I know.
And there's a waiting list.
I assumed.
5 years.
For a bag?
It's not a bag. It's a Birkin.
A factory worker in China stood in front of what looked exactly like a stack of Hermès Birkin bags. Only these weren't sitting in some pristine Parisian workshop. They were fresh off a production line in Guangzhou. The video spread like wildfire, not just because it showed what looked like the world's most exclusive bag being mass-produced, but because the man in the video laid out exactly how much it really costs to make one. And it's not $40,000.
Birkin bag at Hermes boutique will cost you 38,000 USD. But what is the real cost out of the factory? Today, I'm going to break it down in front of you step by step. First thing first, Hermes only use the leathers from the 3 top-level suppliers. One is called Vuitton from Italy. The second is Weinheim from Germany. And the third is us from France. One piece of Togo leather, the same leather as this one, will cost 450 USD. And one piece of the leather is only enough to make one Birkin, okay? The thread. And of course, for Hermes Birkin, the thread is also the best top level. It's called Fil au Chinois from France. This is actually the Rolls Royce in the thread. For each bag, the cost is 25 USD. And then the hardware. See, this hardware is called 316 hardware. It's also known as the ocean stainless steel because it can withstand the erosion of seawater. It's the best stainless steel. For one piece of bag, the hardware will cost 150 USD. The edge oil. This edge oil is imported from Italy. It's called heat seal edge oil. For each bag, it will cost 50 USD. The interior lining, it used lambskin imported from France. For each bag, the cost will be 100 USD. And also inside, there is a zipper from Riri brand. The zipper for one bag is 10 USD. And then the cost of human resource. The French artisans is much more expensive than Chinese artisans. To finish one bag, the human resource cost will be 600 USD. A package. Now this is not that expensive, it's 10 USD. So now to sum those up, the total cost will be 1,400 USD for one Birkin out of factory. But why Hermes will charge you 38,000 USD for one bag? That's because more than 90% of the price is paid for its logo.
He broke it down like a receipt. According to him, more than 90% of what you're paying for is the logo. People didn't just get mad, they felt played. Because this wasn't a knockoff operation. The man claimed his factory used the same materials, same construction methods, and even the same suppliers that Hermes boasts about in its branding. But that wasn't the end of it, because what Hermes says about where their bags are made is an entirely different story.
Fabrice is doing the last stitching on a Kelly bag. A Kelly takes around 13 hours to be made, depending on the materials that we make. Our artisans, they need to do 4 years of training to be able to manufacture a Kelly bag. This that you've just seen, the perlage, you need to be very skilled and very, very good, because if you miss one single second to the side, you have to redo everything again. So.
Every Birkin bag, they claim, is handcrafted by elite artisans in France, stitch by stitch. It's a fantasy, a stupid fantasy people are willing to wait years and drop tens of thousands of dollars to be a part of. Because nowhere on Hermès' official website do they acknowledge production in China. Not a word. In fact, they double down on their French heritage with phrases like, produced exclusively in France, and our leather goods are handmade in our ateliers. The implication is crystal clear, made in France, period. But if these bags are being assembled in Chinese factories, how is that even legal?
Some say as long as there's a tag saying made in China, the bag can never be luxury. However, in fact, more than 80% of the luxury bags in the world are made in China. But those luxury brands just won't acknowledge that. They take almost finished bags from China factories back to their own factories and just do the repackaging and logo installing, something like that. That way, the bags will appear at their boutiques as made in Italy or made in France, you know, those sophisticated European countries.
That's where things get messy. Viewers began pointing to false advertising, saying they were misled by Hermès claims. In some countries, including the US, mislabeling a product's origin isn't just bad PR, it could qualify as consumer fraud. If a brand charges $38,000 for something sold under a specific national origin, that origin better be accurate, and just when the outrage peaked, the lawsuits started rolling in.
I'm officially opting out of the Hermes quota bag game. I went to the Hermes flagship today in New York. The essay could not have been ruder, and it's really making me reevaluate this whole process. Don't get me wrong, I love handbags, and my dream bag is an Hermes Kelly 25, but I decided today that I'm going to take my foot off the pedal in this whole process and like trying to build purchase history because one, it doesn't make sense for me financially to buy a $10,000 bag. Two, every time I go to the store, I'm leaving feeling so unwanted. And three, I think the Hermes game is played a lot longer than people let on. When I was in the store, the people who were being treated the nicest were women in their like 50s and 60s who clearly had the net worth and like the wealth to be able to afford a quota bag from Hermes.
In California, a class action lawsuit has already surfaced, accusing Hermes of manipulating customers into spending thousands on scarves, jewelry, and other items just to qualify for a Birkin. That's right, before you can even get on the waitlist, you're expected to drop serious money on preliminary purchases. And now, buyers are arguing they were misled into thinking they were earning a spot for a handmade French heirloom, not a bag potentially assembled halfway across the world. It's not just legal threats. Customers are demanding refunds, calling Hermes out for misrepresenting their product. If these bags were made, or even partly assembled, in China, that could violate advertising and consumer protection laws in multiple countries. Meanwhile, the resale market is imploding. Resellers are scrambling to unload Birkins they fear are about to plummet in value. Collectors who once flaunted their finds on Instagram are now questioning whether they bought into a $40,000 illusion. And luxury authentication services, they're suddenly under pressure too. Because if a Birkin says made in France but was assembled somewhere else, what exactly are you authenticating? But Hermes isn't the only brand sweating right now, because the factory in that viral video dropped even more names. Standing in front of rows of high-end bags, he casually name-dropped some of the biggest players in the game: Gucci, Prada, Coach, Louis Vuitton. His message was simple and brutal. We've been making bags for all of them. Then came the real shocker. According to one source, over 80% of all luxury brand products are made in China. Not some off-the-books operation, but full-scale manufacturing, quietly outsourced while brands still plaster "made in France" or "made in Italy" across their tags. And it's not just one guy saying it. Insiders have traced high-end materials, like French lambskin, Italian edge oil, and Swiss zippers, right back to Chinese factories. A Hong Kong sourcing platform called APF even lists the same leather suppliers Hermes claims to use, now tied directly to Chinese assembly lines. Even respected designers and fashion journalists are starting to admit the Made in Europe label is often a marketing decision, not a manufacturing fact. Parts might pass through France or Italy, just long enough to justify the claim. And while these questions flooded social media, Hermes made a decision that said more than any statement ever could. In a world where brands will clap back over a bad Yelp review, Hermes didn't say anything. Because when a brand built entirely on prestige, exclusivity, and heritage is publicly accused of deception, people expect answers. And when none come, the public draws its own conclusions. Comment sections exploded. TikToks with titles like "I spent $30,000 on a lie" went viral. Influencers who once worshipped Hermes began dragging them, not just for the scandal, but for refusing to address it. Even longtime luxury insiders started turning. Some defended the brand, saying that quality still matters regardless of location. But others weren't buying it. They argued that in luxury, trust is the product, and once that's gone, so is the value. In a PR landscape where silence often equals guilt, Hermès' decision to say nothing may have been the loudest statement of all. A brand that prides itself on tradition suddenly felt outdated, arrogant, out of touch. But while Hermes stayed quiet, a new theory started to take over. One that hinted this scandal might be more than just fashion drama. Just when the internet thought this was all about handbags, the story took a political turn. As the Hermes exposé continued gaining traction on TikTok, some users began connecting the dots. Not between brands, but between governments. Here's where it gets wild. Around the same time these viral videos started trending, President Trump announced a 145% tariff hike on Chinese imports, including fashion goods. Some saw this as more than coincidence. They claimed the Chinese government was pushing these exposés through the TikTok algorithm as retaliation. The theory? China's algorithm was selectively promoting content that undermined Western luxury brands, using scandal to strike where it hurts most: prestige and profit. In a digital age, reputations are currency, and TikTok is the new battlefield. And while there's no solid proof that China directly manipulated the narrative, the timing was enough to raise eyebrows. Some clips seem to gain millions of views overnight. Others that question the legitimacy of the exposé? Shadow banned, throttled, or buried. It might sound like a stretch until you remember that TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, is based in Beijing. And when political tensions rise, narratives become weapons. Still, even if the algorithm was nudging this drama forward, one fact remains: the content hit a nerve. People engaged with it not because they were told to, but because they believed it. And now, with the scandal reaching critical mass, consumers were left asking a brutally simple question: what exactly are we paying for?